This is my country, my damn country. Give me my country, you can keep the rest. This is my country, my damn country. And it don't mean a thing if it don't pass the test. If you ain't never spent a single night in jail, then get another job and I'll see you in hell.
G'day guys, what's going on? I just stumbled upon this article online and thought it was an interesting one, as I had been thinking about this recently. Anyway, the article was on macquariedictionary.com.au. If you guys want an Australian dictionary, if you are learning Australian English, this is a great website to check out. They have a lot of Australian specific content. Anyway, yeah, so I was on this site, found this article, Our Chief Editor on the Influence of Other Englishes on Australian English. The Daily Telegraph published an article discussing the rise in Aussie kids picking up US slang and pronunciation from games and streaming services. Among other examples, it pointed out more kids are choosing to say Z instead of Z for the last letter of the alphabet. Australia, we usually say Z. Americans would say Z. At least we'll see what happens in the future, huh? They pronounce... I want to do this correctly. They pronounce offence and offence and defence with the emphasis on the first syllable. Offence, defence. I was practicing these before because I was like, what? Americans say them differently? That's why I was confused. So they're putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable there. Offence or offence instead of offence. And changing the U sound in words such as due, duplicate, and attitude. Now that is a big one. That is a big one that Americans do that we don't do. So we do something that's called assimilation, where you have the sound, the D sound, the T sound, all the sounds before the U sound. The U modifies the sound before it, right? So instead of do and duplicate, attitude, I would say ju, duplicate, and attitude, right? So that's an interesting one. Also taking over are trendy new words from YouTube stars such as tea for scandalous gossip. Never heard that. Lit to describe something amazing. I think I have heard Americans say that's really lit. Or shade to trash someone, while bathroom has largely replaced toilet and butt is preferred to bum. How can these kids be doing this to us? Here in Australia, we have always taken up words and expressions from other English-speaking parts of the world. Now, this is true. I do this all the time. And to be honest, sometimes I misspell words, right? So in American English, they'll spell words, say, ending in I-S-E. In British and Australian English, they'll spell it with a Z, I-Z-E. They'll write words like centre. Instead of R-E, they'll write it E-R. Sometimes I make those mistakes, and the problem I think I have is that all the programs on the computers tend to use American English as default too, and so I always have to go through and try and correct all of them. So there's no denying that US English has become the greatest overseas influence on Australian English and probably all other forms of English. Probably since World War II, that influence has grown exponentially in recent years, first with films and TV, and then the internet, social media, and YouTube and computer games. And I hadn't really thought about the effect of computer games on changing English and streaming stuff live. And I guess that's because that's not part of what I do. I don't really watch that kind of content or play many computer games, but I know that kids these days watch a lot of computer games being played online. They watch a lot of streamers online, and I guess a lot of them are American, so that's crazy. So the US is being exposed to Australian English as well through our films and TV and the internet. Think selfie and budgie smugglers. Never knew that selfie was an Australian word, though it makes sense because we have a lot of IE words. But there is obviously a huge discrepancy between the amount of US material that we are exposed to and the amount of Australian content that Americans see. That's true. Although it sometimes seems that Australians, especially the younger demographic, are unquestionably adopting US English, there is actually some selectiveness going on. That's interesting. We still say thongs for the things that we put on our feet, right? Instead of flip-flops. We go up to the street to buy a barbecue chook. That's a chicken, right? You'll buy a chook. We go to the footy and we take an esky, a cooler to the football. And we have bucks parties. I don't even know, would you call them bachelor party or something in American English? I've always thought that was a common one everyone uses. And we still have lounge rooms and drive utes and light the Barbie up. We're still bogans and bludgers and dags. We still take sickies. That's like not going to work because you've called in and said you were sick, so you've taken a sick day, and the sick day is called a sickie. And if the other kids muck up, they do something wrong, we might dob on them. That's to tell the teacher in an Australian accent there. So yeah, it's an interesting article, and the Daily Telegraph also had it here, and they showed a video of these Australian kids using a lot of American words for things like cookie instead of biscuit and tomato instead of tomato. And so it is interesting, and they were also mentioning how much YouTube and Netflix is affecting our children, because although the TV in Australia, and probably in all other countries as well, tends to have quotas on how much foreign content can be on the TV, especially for children, for obvious reasons, right? They don't want children growing up watching foreign dialects, because it would, undoubtedly cause the native dialect to disappear. And so they were saying that while TV has local content rules that can help the Aussie accent and keep it alive, the US lingo's influence on how young Australians speak and sound is unlimited online. So kids are watching heaps of Netflix and YouTube, and the bulk of the content on there is American anyway. I thought I would talk a little bit about the history of the Australian accent, Australian English, right? Because it is a kind of cool history. We are a colony of migrants or immigrants, a lot of people that came from different parts of England originally, and I think Scotland and Ireland, and then many other places in the world. But the first people to come to Australia obviously brought their accents, right? And they were all living in very small communities in Australia, but with lots of different accents going on. And another part of it was the fact that the majority of them were convicts. They were criminals, so they weren't upper class British folk worried about maintaining, their accents. And so I think this is why Australia uses a heap of slang, why we are very anti the class-based system. We like to call people mate. Anyway, check this out. The earliest form of Australian English was spoken by children of the colonists in early New South Wales. That's the state that they colonised first. This first generation of native-born children, so the children born in Australia, created a new dialect that was to become the language of the nation. So that's really cool, because the Australian-born children that were born in this new colony were exposed to a wide range of dialects, a wide range of slang, a wide range of accents from all over the British Isles, Ireland, and southeast England. And they obviously mixed it together, right? Because you have these children all hanging out together, all learning together, all growing up together. So they're going to, sound the same. They'll be affected by their parents initially, you would imagine. But once they start spending time together, as you'll see when foreigners come to places like Australia and raise their children here, and the children go to school, within a year they have an Australian accent, right? Depending on their age. So the native-born children in the colony created the new dialect from the speech they heard around them, and with it expressed peer solidarity. Even when new settlers arrived, the new dialect was strong enough to blunt other patterns of speech. So there you go. Pretty interesting story about the Australian accent and what's going on with the influence of other foreign dialects of English, particularly American English. So is Australian English going to die? Well, eventually, maybe 100, 1,000 years from now. But I think we're definitely going to hold on to our identity, our slang, and the majority of our accent. We may say the odd word like an American if we see a lot of it on TV, but I'm not worried about Australian English dying out anytime soon. Anyway, guys, I'm Pete from the Aussie English Podcast, a podcast that I release English learning content for anyone interested in Australian English. If you want to check that out, go to theaussieenglishpodcast.com. And aside from that, I hope you have a ripper of a day, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace!
This is my country, my damn country. Give me my country, you can keep the rest. This is my country, my damn country. And it don't mean a thing if it don't pass the test. If you can't sing along, it's here in my beer. Then don't forget your coat and get the f*** out of here.